And I hope we have once again reminded people that man is not free unless government is limited. There's a clear cause and effect here that is as neat and predictable as a law of physics. As government expands, liberty contracts.
From this day forward, it's going to be only America first. America first.
Good afternoon, Secretary Fwell, and thank you for joining us again on the Liberty Podcast. You and I had a conversation here several weeks ago, and it seemed like a good time to have you come back and bring us up to speed on how your campaign is going and what you're encountering as you go around the state.
Steve, thank you for having me. And I've heard such great positive remarks about the last podcast that we did. And I think the reason is that people are so angry and so frustrated and so hungry. The Republicans don't even really recognize the Republican Party anymore. The young folks don't even know what Republicans stand for. And the world is coming at your viewers so fast in ways that no one ever expected. And I think that any time that we can bring them real conservatism, the conservatism that represents the Republican Party that I joined nearly 50 years ago, I think it really stabilizes people. So I appreciate the opportunity to be back with you today. Now, since I was with you last, let's be clear that I have been full-time as the keeper of the public purse, attending my duties, chairing meetings, negotiating contracts. Yesterday, I was on a 30-minute Zoom call with one of the biggest Fortune 50 CEOs in the United States, where we were talking about several things having to do with our investment management division. We manage one of the largest pools of public money in the world. But in that process, I told him this is my last year as the state treasurer, and that any time this year that he would like to decide to relocate his company from where it is to North Carolina, that I would stop what I'm doing to make sure that happened. And so that's just a reminder to all your viewers that I'm actually doing my full-time job that they are paying me to do and hiring me to do. The campaign's going fantastic. Momentum is really shifting hard. Part of it is that people just want to vote for someone, not a vote against anyone else. Secondly, I think people are tired of losing. Thirdly, they're coming to the realization that this is not a vote or a purchase that you make in March, and then if you don't like how it looks on you, you can return it in April. And lastly, they want someone who can actually win and can govern like an adult and can explain conservatism without offending people. I know you just got out of a lunch where a representative was there from John Locke. Even some of the think tanks have lost the definition of conservatism. And it's very clear. The root word of conservative is to conserve. So as governor, the root word of governor is to govern. As governor, we are going to have a culture of conservatism, common sense, not so common, courtesy, which means answering your phones at state government. I was asked by a major newspaper in the last few weeks, what's the first thing I'm going to focus on? And I said, you won't print it if I say it. And they said, try us. And I said, answering the telephones. As a former motorcycle mechanic and garbage collector, I can tell you that I've never been able to repair a motorcycle that I cannot see and cannot hear. When people call the state government, they're not calling to book a cruise. They're calling because they need something resolved. And that resolving could be a tax refund situation. It could be a coroner's report. It could be something to do with foster care, DMV, DET, regulation from DENR, Board of Elections. And I think people are just super excited about finally having a culture of state government that focuses on customer service. And the last two things quickly is humility, which means admitting when you're wrong. Stephen, I don't know if you may realize that have to fill out lots and lots of surveys as gubernatorial candidates. And we make mistakes because they all start to run together and they all have the same deadline on them. And a person wrote me today and said, I'm not voting for you because of this. And it was some kind of multiple choice, and I picked B, and I should have picked C, and I'm in favor of B and D. It's kind of a tricky thing. And the person emailed me back and said, that's what I want. Somebody who will admit they made a mistake. So campaign's going really well. Unfortunately, the presumptive front runner in this race, even though he's losing all the straw polls across North Carolina by double digits. Now, this is straw polls from the Liberty Conservative Leadership Conference. I wasn't even at that conference. I won that poll by double digits. The Hornet's Nest, a very big group down in Charlotte, North Carolina, with Mecklenburg and Union County. I won that poll by over 20 points. And all other kinds of polls that we see, it's the result of a person who doesn't show up for the job they currently have. This is Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson, documented, and then will not show up for an interview for the next job that he wants. So I am happy between my ears. As I said to you last time I was with you, at night, I hope that God is happy with me. And in the morning, I try to make sure that God's between my ears before the rest of the world gets there. But I'm super excited that voting has started today, and I'm looking forward to being the Republican nominee.
And that's a good point, which I should interject. The early voting did begin today, and will run through March 2nd. And then, of course, primary election day is March 5. So we're on the final stretch here. And also, in terms of dates, I should mention that this coming Monday, February 19, you will be in Moore County to attend a reception at a local restaurant called Char Bar 7, which is on Morganton Road in Southern Pines. Everybody in the area by now knows where that is, beginning at 6 p.m. And everybody within the sound of my voice is encouraged to come by and ask your questions and find out as to the substance of your race for governor in these final days until primary election day on March 5. I think one of the questions that comes up during a campaign, especially in the home stretch, is where you feel you stand on fundraising. Do you feel like that's a mountain that is a big climb between now and election day, or are you feeling good about that?
I am never going to have as much money as the other candidates. I will not sell access to the treasurer's office, and I'll never sell access to the governor's office. I think the people in Moore County need to sit back for 5 seconds and ask themselves a simple question. Why would someone spend $100 million getting elected to a job that pays $170,000 a year? Because it's not about the $170,000 a year. Look at the net worth of all these elected officials, whether they're in Raleigh or Washington, D.C., who have become multimillionaires. You know, the lieutenant governor and his family have become millionaires in a very short period of time based on a family business that they have. That's not happened to me. That will not happen to me. And so, number one, the fundraising, we will not have as much money as other people, but we're going to have enough to win. Secondly, I will not sell access to the treasurer's office. That means taking money in because of all the investment banking fees and all the lawyer fees and all the bond counsel fees and all the actuarial fees, taking money in from people who do business with the treasurer's office, because we are 8 times the size of the state government, 8. And taking those, doing business with those people contributing to a campaign, and then using that campaign to run for governor. I will not and never will do that. Now, why is that? I think it's unethical, and I think ethics is what you do when no one's watching. But it's also what you do when the powerful forces of this society want you to look the other way. And I have not looked the other way when I took on Larry Fink and BlackRock and ESG and asked for him to be fired and took all of our proxies from BlackRock back to North Carolina. I will not look the other way when a major drug company is trying to charge our state employees and those that teach and protect and otherwise serve nearly $1,500 for a vial of weight loss drug that costs $250 back in their home country. I will not look the other way when we have a process to go through to make sure that we're getting competitive bids on our insurance products through the state health plan. I will not look the other way, and I will be bold and courageous when it comes to taking on the healthcare cartel of North Carolina. A cartel is defined as an association which is formed to restrict competition or raise prices. So the fact is that in the words of former Congressman John Lewis, it seems I get into good trouble every day. Mm-hmm. And I don't mind being in good trouble when I'm advocating for the invisible. Those that teach, those that protect, those that otherwise serve, taxpayers like them, and what I call the invisible. This is what I'm going to talk about Monday night, and I hope your viewers will come out and support me. The invisible are those that do not have enough money to have political influence, make just a little too much money working 1 and 2 jobs to pay their taxes and praying for a better outcome. I'm always going to advocate for the invisible. I'm never going to look the other way when I see something that's unfair and unjust. And so that was a long answer to your question about fundraising. We're not going to have as much as the other people, but we're going to have enough to win the primary and win the general election.
We just have a short time left. And before we go, please share with the folks how they can find out more about your campaign using social media and how they can send donations to support you here in these vital days of early voting.
Well, I hope they'll come out Monday because they're going to see real conservatism. You know what that is? Those are some envelopes I had left over from the treasurer's race where people are going to be able to put their checks back in that exact same envelope and contribute to my campaign because there's nothing wrong with that envelope other than it says treasurer versus governor. And I know that seems kind of silly, but we're trying to build a culture. And so what I'm trying to say in my remaining time is that conservatism is fun. Fixing things is fun. We are going to fix so much at our state government. It's just going to make all North Carolinians proud. People can learn more at www.dalefolwell.com. You're going to see all the endorsements that have come my way. The State Employees Association never endorsed a Republican for governor, ever. Former Governor Jim Martin. Stands for Healthcare Freedom endorsed me. Grassroots Government North Carolina has endorsed me. The Beaufort Observer has endorsed me. It's a stutter, it's kind of tough. So people can find out more at www.dalefolwell.com. If they had to go to one place on that website other than the donation page, I wish they'll go to the About Dale. There is a letter from my wife, which you've read, Stephen, that talks about our 35 years together. She has been a phenomenal spouse and mother and friend to so many, and she is going to be an unbelievable First Lady.
Well, that's certainly a tribute to the sturdiness of your marriage, given that you've asked her to stay in an Econo Lodge or two over the years. So
How much time we have left?
As much as you need, but I always love your anecdote about being the platinum card carrying Econo Lodge customer. That's
I am the only platinum member. I'm the only treasurer in the United States who's a platinum member of the Econo Lodge. I'll be the only governor in the United States who's a platinum member of the Econo Lodge because when it comes to spending taxpayer money, I just think ethics is what you do when no one's watching. But she's been a good sport about most of that. She put her foot down last year, and when she said no more doors that open to the parking lot, and
seems reasonable.
It wasn't funny. I got
accommodated, not to use a bad pun.
Yeah, that was good. got in a bind in Cherokee when I was speaking to the Police Chiefs Association, and she doesn't see well at night. It was pouring down rain, and I didn't back into the Econo Lodge. I pulled straight in. The receptionist and the lady handed me a key. I said, "I'd like to look at a room." And she handed me room 101. And I said, "Ma'am, do you have anything on the second floor?" She said, "Oh, no, sir. You're a platinum member. You get our best room." We've never had a platinum member stay here before. And so I said, "What you don't understand, I promised my wife that I would not have any more doors that opened in the parking lot." She put her hand on her hip, this lady at the reception desk, and said, "You don't think she's going to figure out that when she opens a door to a balcony to a parking lot, it's the exact same?" I mean, my point is that it's time to have fun with conservatism. It's
Right.
time to have fun with saving and fixing, and that's what I'm going to do as the governor.
Well, Dale Folwell, thank you very much for joining us today on the Liberty Podcast. We'll look forward to seeing you in Moore County this Monday at 6 p.m. at the Char Bar 7 restaurant in Southern Pines. Have a great day.
Thank you for having me. God bless.
Welcome back. You've found us again, the Liberty Podcast. And we're ready to get going on this, the 15th day of February, 2024. The first day of early voting across the state of North Carolina, counting down toward the March 5 primary election day. Vote early, say the Democrats. I'm not so sure that we need this many days of early voting, but it started. 2 locations in Moore County. Go out there and see what's going on, and let's hope that everybody's counting the ballots correctly. You know, it's very interesting. This past week, when suddenly the chairman of the North Carolina Republican Party, Michael Whatley, very much of a foot soldier in the trenches, suddenly emerges as Donald Trump's pick to replace the feckless Ronna McDaniel. Some call her Ronna Romney McDaniel because of her ties to Mitt Romney. I believe that Mitt is her uncle. But here comes Michael Whatley, who has been anointed essentially by Trump to become the next chair of the Republican National Committee. Big job. And believe me, a lot of work has to be done. And I think Whatley knows that. He knows how tough it is just at the state level. Some of us still remember last summer's convention in Greensboro, where all hell broke loose over censuring Senator Thom Tillis. There was great division in the party about that. There was also total chaos when it came to re-electing Whatley as chairman, using some kind of a very glitchy piece of phone app technology, which thrust the convention into chaos for quite a period of time, to the point where we wondered if we were ever going to get out of there with a chairman re-elected. It was not a great sight, but we'll put that behind us because we need a fresh start in the Republican National Committee. And Michael Whatley certainly is probably as qualified as anybody. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to for now. You know, we had a tough Tuesday for the Republicans. Speaking of Republican angst, there was a special election out on Long Island in New York to replace George Santos, a Republican who had been expelled from the U.S. House with the help of his own Republicans last year, which left his seat open and forced a special election. Well, wouldn't you know it, the Democrats come back with a veteran former member of the House who's run and won several times. They put him in as their candidate. We put in a novice candidate who has a really great story. She's an immigrant. She's obviously highly intelligent, highly impassioned, highly conservative, but apparently never had a chance. And she was rather roundly defeated in this Tuesday special election, which means that now we had a secure Republican in that seat. And somehow we decided that he needed to go, even though, yes, there were some ethics charges against him, but he was never actually charged with anything criminal. And we went ahead and gave away that seat. We had 311 who voted to expel him, including 105 Republicans, including our very own congressman here in Moore County, Richard Hudson. Well, what happens the morning after this loss, which narrows even further our control of the U.S. House, meaning Republican control? Out comes a statement by the National Republican Congressional Committee. Well, who's in charge of that? Richard Hudson. And what do they say? They say the following regarding New York's 3rd Congressional District. Mazi Pilip, who was defeated in the special election, is a fighter with a bright future within the Republican Party. This was an uphill battle. Joe Biden won this district by 8 points. Democrats outspent Republicans 2-1. It was still a dogfight. Well, kinda, except we lost. Isn't that what matters in the end? It was a self-inflicted wound. We could have let George Santos ride out his term and keep him there. That's what the Democrats do all day long. You never give away a seat. You never make it vulnerable to a special election, especially when, in a district like that one in New York, on Long Island, it's very purple and anything can happen. And it did. It happened in a very negative way for the good guys. All right, let's keep moving because it's rapid fire here today. Rapid fire. Well, another Republican, I think I mentioned him earlier, Thom Tillis. Man, was he upset the other day when the so-called bipartisan deal to secure the border, as if we needed more legislation to do that. I'm talking about our border, by the way. It seems like our border is the last one on their minds in Washington a lot of times. So they got their revenge. They said, well, by golly, we're going to create a spending bill that does nothing but fund Ukraine to the tune of $61 billion and then gives out little crumbs to the tune of another 30-some billion dollars to Israel and Taiwan. Oh, and just by the way, we're going to send a lot of humanitarian money into Gaza for those poor people. Well, do you think the money's going to get to the poor people, or do you think Hamas is going to grab it? The terrorist organization that has controlled Gaza legislatively for several years now, and they're not only terrorists, they think they're local politicians as well. How about that? Isn't that cozy and quaint? But Tillis went off after this bill was passed in the Senate 70-29 to send this money to Ukraine. He wanted to know why in the world we were leaving Ukraine out to dry. Well, we've sent them nearly $100 billion so far, and he says that that this is no longer a stalemate, that Putin is losing the war in Ukraine. I don't see how you'd make that conclusion at all if you go with any of the reports from on the ground. But then he goes on to say, if we walk away, which was never an option, you will see the alliance that is supporting Ukraine crumble. You will ultimately see China become emboldened, and I am not going to be on that page of history. So Tillis is saying we have to send another $61 billion of money that, by the way, we don't really have. It'll be printed and then sent on a pallet to Vladimir Zelensky with no accountability for where it goes after it gets there. Does it really go to the military? I don't know. Or does it come back through a back door into the United States to enrich politicians here on our soil? Could be. It's happened before. So the Republicans are ticked off that they didn't get their border deal, and that the House, the U.S. House, says we're not passing any support for Ukraine, this $95 billion total spending package. We're not participating in that. So what happens right like within 24 hours? With the threat of funding for Ukraine stalled in the House, the propaganda has begun. This is Stenchfield reporting on his podcast. Sadly, it appears high-ranking Republicans are working with Team Biden to scare the American people about the threat of Russia, and in an effort to force strong pressure to pass the Ukraine funding bill. Representative Mike Turner, a Republican, sounded the alarm on his urgent national security threat. Did you hear about that yesterday? Out of the blue, he says Russia suddenly poses an urgent national security threat. And Biden's intelligence goons quietly backed him up while dispatching a series of leaks about the threat. Those leaks appear to have come from the Pentagon, weaponized again. That is no coincidence. The unnamed sources are claiming Russia has created a nuclear threat in space that could take out U.S. satellites and our GPS systems that we rely on. Yes, we do. Can you believe this? Can you believe this? They're like, okay, you won't give us the money? We're going to try to scare the American people. And then they're going to go to their congressman and say, oh, please, please send the money to Ukraine or we're all going to die at the hands of a space nuclear missile attack. Okay, calm down, everybody. Calm down. Now, the Biden administration is also very upset that this bipartisan bill didn't go through in the House that would have provided funding to secure the southern border, along with all this other excess grift going to Ukraine and elsewhere. So now what is the Biden administration up to? Aside from this Russian national security threat narrative, here's the new one. President Biden's Department of Homeland Security is drafting plans that would include a mass release of illegal aliens currently in immigration and customs enforcement custody in the United States. So these are not people coming across the border. These are illegal aliens who are already here, who have been captured by ICE, which is the acronym for the Immigration and Customs Enforcement. They've been captured and they have been held in various places in the country. According to the Washington Post, the Department of Homeland Security, by the way, we just impeached their director, Alejandro Mayorkas. Anyway, the DHS is considering the release of thousands of illegal aliens, which are now in the agency's custody, into American cities and towns because the Biden administration claims they need billions from Congress to avoid carrying out this plan in what is seen as a quasi-extortion scheme. So what are they saying? Give us more money for the border, or we're going to release untold numbers of illegal aliens currently being held on top of all the ones who've crossed over the border and are on the loose already. Pardon me. I just choked on some Biden lies there. So there's another one. For example, here we go. Here's the data. Already, Biden's DHS has drastically cut the number of illegal aliens in ICE custody who are arrested throughout the U.S. interior, often for various pending criminal charges and convictions. Fewer than 11,000 illegal aliens are in ICE custody today who were arrested by ICE agents. Compare that detainee population to May 2019, when more than 19,500 were in ICE custody. So they've been drip, 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 letting them go already right under our noses. It's unbelievable. You can't make it up. I want to quickly address this wonderful piece in the Epoch Times by Jeffrey Tucker, which talks about how the Fed, the Federal Reserve, they're supposed to be this fiercely independent organization above politics, above influence. But, here's the problem. Here's the big problem. The Fed is really, Jeffrey Tucker writes, there to serve its political masters while imposing costs on the rest of us. We see that in how the economy seems to be improving in terms of certain data points like unemployment rates and the rate of inflation coming down, even though inflation is still dramatically high. And yet American citizens say, I'm not feeling it. I'm going to the grocery store and buying groceries is putting me on the brink of personal bankruptcy. And I'm sure as heck not going out to eat anywhere right now. Writes Mr. Tucker in the Epoch Times, everyone associated with the Biden administration has been propagandizing for months and years about the glorious results of Bidenomics. All corporate media echoes this gibberish, even though most people know it is completely untrue. The data are fake. When not fake, the data are not relevant. When the data are relevant, the underlying reality is terrible. You can see it in the savings rate alone. It is going down, now at 3.7%. Historical savings rates among American households have been closer to 10%. This is true even though for the first time in more than a generation, there is finally a positive return on savings. And guess what? Without savings, you don't get sustainable investment. Without that, prosperity dies a gradual death. So how could personal savings be going down? The answer is unbearably obvious. People do not have discretionary income to save. Most people are living paycheck to paycheck, despite record numbers of multiple job holders in households. The most reliable data we have report real income as down. Now, a gentleman over at a investment strategy organization called Strategas named Jason Trennertz recently appeared on Steve Bannon's War Room and presented this really interesting data point, which he calls the Common Man CPI, which is the Consumer Price Index. Now, the Core Consumer Price Index, which is released by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the core CPI, which they say is the official CPI number, always excludes two things that affect everybody's everyday life: food and energy costs. Really? Can you imagine going without food and energy? Just even for a day, people freak out, right? Look what happens when there's a snowstorm and you go to the grocery store and there's no bread, no milk, no eggs, no toilet paper, nothing. It's gone. Over 2 inches of snow. So Mr. Tennert's Common Man CPI aggregates all of the key cost factors in everyday life: food, energy, housing, clothing, utilities, and insurance, like car insurance, home insurance, medical insurance. So since 2018, while wages as indexed by the CPI have gone up by 117.5%, the Common Man CPI, all the costs of living, have gone up by 124.4%. That means there's a 7% gap between wages and cost of living. That's not sustainable. And the gap is not narrowing, it's widening. So anytime you hear about the fact that the economy is sort of, evening out, stabilizing, that the Federal Reserve has really done its job in harnessing in inflation with a soft landing, don't buy into any of it. It's total BS. Okay, the big bombshell of the week, which who thought this day would come? Those of us who have been paying attention know that the Trump legacy has been tainted by the lamestream fake media since before he was even elected, right? Since back in those days of his candidacy, when all we heard about was this Russian collusion, and all kinds of media were telling us that Trump's campaign was compromised by its collaboration and by its coziness with Vladimir Putin and Russia. And then Trump got elected and they said, well, no need to stop the collusion hoax narrative now. We've got to ramp it up because now he's in the White House and we really need to discredit him every way we can. Well, you know what? There's still hope. Remember the two journalists, Matt Taibbi and Michael, let me look for his name real fast because I want to get it right because he's a good journalist, by golly. Michael Schellenberger. Remember several years ago when they were given access to the famous Twitter files by Elon Musk? And remember all of the willful corruption that they exposed through the Twitter files? All the manipulation of of information that was deliberately imposed upon all of us by social media leading up to the 2020 elections, and how that undoubtedly impacted the outcome, along with all of this suppression of information around the pandemic and around masking and vaxxing and lockdowns and social distancing and all that stuff that was supposed to be gospel, which was being propagated by fake campaigns on these social media platforms. The Twitter files exposed all of that. Well, guess what? Those same journalists are back with a big-time vengeance, ladies and gentlemen, using the platform Substack, which for those of you who are not familiar, Substack is essentially a website where authors, whether they're columnists, reporters, pundits, etc., bloviators, can simply create an account and they can post content as often or as infrequently as they want. And the ones who are really legitimate reporters and columnists and pundits then have the option to require readers of their content to subscribe. And usually it's $5 a month, $10 a month. It's sort of like paid journalism for the citizenry, for the common man who wants access to reliable information without paying a lot of money for it. So these Substack journalists have proliferated in recent years. So these two guys, Schellenberger and Taibbi, have both established their own Substack presences, and they have now blown the complete lid off of Russia hoax gate, whatever you want to call it. I'm just going to read their latest of three, the third of a three-part series that they have posted in the last roughly 72 hours. Taibbi and Schellenberger. It was all a lie. The Trump-Russia scandal made its formal launch on January 6, 2017, the other January 6th, when the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, published what's called an Intelligence Community Assessment, or an ICA, as it's universally known. Release of the ICA dominated headlines, fixed Trump in the minds of millions of Americans as a Manchurian candidate controlled by Vladimir Putin, and upended his incoming administration. The report declared that Russia and Putin interfered in the 2016 presidential election to denigrate Hillary Clinton and, quote, harm her electability thanks to their, quote, clear preference for President-elect Donald Trump, meaning Russia and Putin. It was powerful stuff, and it was dead wrong, they report. Quote, they cooked the intelligence, end quote, says a source close to a House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence investigation into the origins of the Trump-Russia scandal. They made it look like Putin supported Trump, the source added. The evidence points the other way. Former CIA Director John Brennan and the ICA authors embellished their conclusion by upgrading unreliable sources to reliable, said the source. Quote, they upgraded in the writing of their report to let those sources have more credibility and a higher rating. We caught them on 3 to 4 items where those people didn't have a credible historic reporting line and changed the source rating just for that Brennan report. Dissent, even within Brennan's group of 24 handpicked analysts, was always overruled. So where is this going? A Public and Racket reporting. So Public is one of their Substacks, and Racket is Taibbi's. And those are just random names. It's kind of like Twitter and anything else that has a name, Google and Yahoo. They're just names. One is called Public, which is where the brunt of this reporting has been posted, and it is a paywall site. So I'm sharing it with you as a subscriber so that you don't have to subscribe. According to their reporting, U.S. intel leaders coaxed foreign allies, particularly from the so-called Five Eyes, which are 5 countries that do reciprocal spying, one for the other, with partners that include the United Kingdom. They used the Five Eyes to make contacts and to do bumping, meaning casual encounters, with Trump associates throughout 2016. A crucial conclusion of the House investigators was that both the surveillance campaign and the rapidly assembled ICA were conducted for political reasons. This was not a national security investigation that turned political. It began as a political enterprise. Quote, they thought they could damage Trump, a source said. It had nothing to do with our relationship with Russia. It was just leveraging capabilities to undermine this rookie, unprepared Trump campaign because they were easy marks, end quote, or so they thought. The story of a highly influential whitewashed intelligence product whose true conclusions only became known later is, of course, not new. This also happened in the weapons of mass destruction affair back during the Bush years, when a politically charged intelligence report concluded that Saddam Hussein was intent on pursuing nuclear weapons, and that was, leveraged in order to justify our invasion of Iraq. None of the information shared with Public and Racket has been reported until now. The information obtained by Public and Racket, Schellenberger and Taibbi, is based on information from three sources close to the House investigation who describe reports and internal documentation assiduously kept from the public for years. And now you may remember, and I want to wrap up with this, right before Christmas in December, there was a report by CNN. It was an extraordinary article, and it was entitled The Mystery of the Missing Binder, How a Collection of Raw Russian Intelligence Disappeared Under Trump. Well, it turns out that this binder contains the roadmap for how this entire Russian collusion operation was carried out, and they can't find it. And now that's leading some to conclude that that's probably why they raided Mar-a-Lago. They weren't looking for classified documents that Trump had declassified and taken into his possession. They were looking for this enormous binder that contains the bombshells that Taibbi is now releasing. CNN and its intelligence sources were talking about exposure of closely guarded national secrets as if that was the intent of the reporting in this binder. But sources have now told Public and Racket that the secret officials, that what they really worried about being exposed are things that would implicate them in widespread abuses of intelligence authority dating back to the 2015-2016 election cycle. I would call the binder Trump's insurance policy, said someone with knowledge about the case. He was very concerned about having it and taking it with him because it was the roadmap of Russiagate. So now we know. Now we know. And this story is only going to continue to metastasize and develop. And when all is said and done, people are going to be held to account in the weaponized intelligence community on many levels. This was a great travesty imposed upon us by people with ill intent. They don't deserve to get away with it. I hope you enjoyed joining us today for another edition of the Liberty Podcast. We're going to come right back next week for another version of truth and commentary, hoping to keep you in the loop, keep your eyes focused on the prize. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.